Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 AIA Austin Homes Tour. We're here at a live webinar with Camille Jobe and Corral, who are the architects for the Solarium, which is one of the 9 homes on our virtual tour this year. We really hope that you've been enjoying the tour so far. The webinar that we've got for you today is entitled A Modern Interpretation of Craftsman. And we are fortunate to have Ada and Camille here with us, as well as Garland Turner from Wood Eye Construction, the builder, and Jennifer Orr from Studio Balcones, the landscape architect. And we want to send a huge shout out to both Wood Eye and Studio Balcones for underwriting the homes tour this year. We absolutely could not have done this without you, and can't thank you enough for your support. So I'll start with just a little bit of background about Ada and Camille's firm, Jobe Corral Architects. Jobe Corral Architects is 100% women-owned and operated and based in Central Austin. Their firm specializes in highly crafted and well-built residential structures using authentic materials. They also selectively designed civic and commercial spaces. In all cases, Jobe Corral's approach is rooted in the beauty of the site and in the experience of place. Consideration of the individual moments and experiences of daily life is a theme that brings warmth and texture to their projects, which is certainly evident, as you'll see today, in the Solarium.
So just a little bit of housekeeping. Please enter your questions into the Q&A. I think you're probably pretty good at that by now as they come up, and we'll address them in the last 15 to 20 minutes of the presentation. We're going to be looking at the Q&A, not the chat as much for questions. So without further ado, I'm going to let Ada and Camille take it away.
Hi, I'm Camille Jobe, Jobe Corral Architects, and we are really happy to be here for the first virtual AIA Homes Tour, and super grateful to our amazing client that has allowed us to open up his home and show it to everybody today.
Hi everyone, I'm Ada Corral. Thank you for being here today. The Solarium is all about the craft and the details, which means it's all about the people who were involved in it. So we want to thank everyone who was a part of it. It's very weird to be here talking to you guys and not see any of your faces. So please send us comments and questions. We would love to see what you're thinking. Thank you again to our sponsors. Wood Eye Construction was our contractor. Garland Turner is the owner of Wood Eye Construction, and he's going to be talking to us later today. And we have Jennifer Orr and Ilsa Frank with Studio Balcones, who was our landscape architects. We also have some bronze level sponsors, which are Ferguson, Jobe Fab, and Texas Sun and Shade. Thank you so much to all of you.
Okay, so here we are. A few years ago, our client came to us and said, I have this fantastic craftsman house that I really love. It's a little small. I need some extra space to do some entertaining, and it needs a little freshening up. But I really love the Craftsman house, and it's in a historic neighborhood in Austin, and it is truly one of the houses that is kept most intact there when there's a lot of turnover happening in Austin in general. And so the task we had was to figure out how to make the most out of this beautiful Craftsman and help our client get the programmatic needs that weren't currently being met. So this is how we This is the final product of the front of the house. So our street view captures the existing Craftsman exactly as it was. We just did a little freshen up on it, but it's a beautiful little crafted piece. The thing that's wonderful about Craftsman is the attention to detail, and it's written right there in the style's name. So what we wanted to do was talk to our client about exactly what was missing in this house. Craftsmen are really great because they are tuned into those details in the craft. The thing that they don't do very well is let in a little light and air and have that flexibility that we have in modern life that we like in our houses for entertaining, connection to the exterior spaces, the outdoors. A lot of that was lacking. So we had a lot of existing spaces that were very small and closed in. This is the existing site that we had.
Let me interrupt you real quickly. We're not seeing your screen. Can you try to share your screen again?
Oh.
Huh.
Well,
Here we
we'll
go.
super quick tour.
Yeah, it's
These
showing
were
up on
our
our side.
sponsors. Let me put it full screen. Here we go.
Okay, can everybody see it now?
Well, we've got a black slide so far, but if you forward the slide, can we see?
Sharing is paused. Go up to the top.
Do a control tab again.
Mm,
Command tab. Okay.
there's a little
Sorry about the
X.
technical issues. Let me see. I'm gonna try to.
You know, it just doesn't matter how many times you practice this. When it comes to the real time, it's going to have its own way of doing things.
Can you
I
see
think
it
we
now?
see it now. Yep, I think we're good.
Yay! Okay, here's the existing craftsman. You can tell it's very original. It's beautiful. It's well intact. It was a little dark. It needed a little bit of freshening up. And here's the next slide. This is the final product. This is what the house looks like now. It's a little bit fresher, a little bit airier, but we still were running up against the problems on the inside of the house where we didn't have space for entertaining. So the primary concern that the client had was not only did he need more light and air in his spaces, but he needed space for entertaining, and all of these spaces were very small in the plan. So this is a site plan, and the street is off to the right. The alley is to the left. This is in a neighborhood close to downtown Austin where we have smallish lots. It's a historic neighborhood. One of the great things about the way he found this house was you can see the dark gray in the main house is the original craftsman. And in the 80s, there was an ADU built over the garage off of the vehicular alleyway in the back. ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. I think many of you may have seen Nicole Blair's presentation yesterday on an ADU that she constructed. It's a very smart thing to put on a site, especially in areas in central Austin where we're trying to build up the density and get more people living closer in the downtown area. You can use them for rental space or income, or just as a guest unit. Our client uses his as a guest unit. So he had this great little compound where he had the intact house, and you can see how tiny the little rooms are in it. And then he had the dwelling unit on the outside that was over the garage. And in the 80s, they also added this little white space, which is the dining room up towards the top. And so the scope of our project was that we needed to find him enough space on this site that was already pretty built out to have a space for entertaining. He needed a space that was light filled and more open for him to use on a daily basis. He needed some outdoor entertaining space. He needed a place to cook outside. So you can see the list was long. The amount of space that we had to work with was very small. It was about 400 square feet. And so we had to put all the program into one space. We added a solarium onto the back of the house. And we call it the solarium because it is really about light and air, and it opens up to the backyard. And the yellow part that you're seeing is the actual air-conditioned indoor space that is enclosed. And then we extended that beyond into this outdoor patio over to the left and a trellised area down the page, which expands visually out. The solarium is almost all glass. And it has a big glass door that goes into the dining room adjacent to it, which expands that entertaining space. And then the glass for the solarium itself expands that space out into the whole backyard. So in effect, what we did was we added one room, but we added several layers of spaces. And that last final space is this really great entertaining space that captures the whole backyard area. So this is how it looked after studio balconies came in and added in the hardscape and the landscape.
I'm so sorry, Camille. We might be having trouble seeing the slides as they forward.
What are you seeing right now?
We're still looking at the site plan.
There should be 4 versions of the site plan.
Site plan,
Okay.
okay.
Have 3 yellow spaces on it?
Yeah, it does. I'm sorry. We're in.
Well,
that's
notes
fine.
for the next presentation.
So what we did here was we ended up doing the solarium, which was the main space. Once we completed that, we started working on an extra space, what we call the bathroom under the stair, which is attached to the ADU. And Otto will explain a little bit more about that later. But essentially, it's a powder room for his guests. And then when we were completed with that, we moved into the inside of the house and renovated the master bathroom, which is the little yellow square that's inside the house. So I'm going to walk you through the project. You can see the craftsman off to the right. Here we are walking up that walkway that came up the side of the house. One thing we were able to do on this lot was use some of that extra space that the city says is not your buildable space on either side of your lot. Everybody has sort of a buffer space on the side that they're not allowed to build in. So we use that as our entryway. So the way that you would approach this house as a party, you come from the front walk, you come up this side, and then you go into what we call sort of the garden vestibule and enter the space that way. So here's a picture as you enter it, and you can see that it's got a lush green screen on one side to block view of the neighbors. And then you come underneath this trellis and you end up in the backyard area. So this is the picture that some of you may have seen at the beginning of the tour and through the pictures. But this is the solarium with all of its retracting doors opened up. And this is the mode where it turns into backyard patio space. Everything is open. The breeze goes all the way through. You can see, if you're looking at the green that goes all the way through to the other side, that also is retracted. It also has a bug screen that comes down. And this is as you move into the inside of the solarium. So what we're going to talk to you a little bit about today is that modern translation of craftsman. And what we wanted to do was create a companion that had different architectural criteria to answer to. We needed light and air. We couldn't get to that with a normal craftsman space. We needed something that was very flexible and that could open and close, and that was also difficult to get within that style. So we moved into a modern style, and it has a very different translation in how you experience the space. But the craft of how we put everything together is really what makes it such a good companion for this original house.
So here's a view of the ADU that Camille was talking about. Looking at it from the solarium, this is the second component of the project, which is that when we were building the solarium, the client came to us and asked if there was any way that we could add a bathroom that could be accessed from the exterior. So in that little original craftsman, there was only one bathroom, which is his personal bathroom. So when people were coming over, they had to use his bathroom or they had to go into the second floor of the ADU, neither which was ideal. So the challenge was that we were already maxed out on impervious coverage. So we looked at the ADU and we thought that maybe if we could add that bathroom under the stairs, we might be able to make it work. So that's what we did. We were able to fit the bathroom in the footprint of the landing of the second floor stairs there, and have a tiny little powder bath there. This is the view from the solarium. And as you can see, it's designed in the same vocabulary as the solarium. And that really starts tying these two structures into a very comprehensive design on the site. We use the same materials. It's a steel frame with the glass. Obviously, this has frosted glass because it's a bathroom. And we also have this perforated screen that encloses the stairs and some of the bathroom. And it adds this translucent layer that is somewhere in between that solid steel and the glass. Here's some details on the left. That's the inside of the bathroom. We have this beautiful cabinet that is it's a steel box that's set into the wall that holds the sink and the cabinet. It has a little shelf for the soap. And you can kind of see a little bit on the side. There's even a cubby for the toilet paper. And then on the right, we were able to fit this outdoor shower underneath the stair.
Now we're going to move back inside the house. So if you saw in that last site plan, the little yellow rectangle inside the house, that's what we're looking at here. That's the master bathroom. So it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in the main house. And this was really the only space in the entire house that got any kind of significant natural light. It's just a really densely tree covered lot for the most part. So even the windows weren't bringing in a lot of light. So the picture on the left is existing. That is from the master bedroom looking into the bathroom. And in the master bathroom, there was a big skylight. You can see a lot of light in there. But man, that bathroom was cramped and it had some weird storage cabinets, and it just wasn't working very well for our clients' needs. One of the things that I forgot to say at the beginning was that our client, this was such a fun project to work on because he is a super, super meticulous engineer. And all of the details and, you know, fussing with everything until it was exactly right was what he wanted. It didn't matter how long it took, as long as everything was perfect in the end. And so that was what was wonderful about working with this team as well, because when you hear from Wood Eye a little bit later, they do amazingly meticulous work and have a lot of patience for that kind of thing. So here is the same view looking from the master into the bath. And one of the things that we thought about when we moved into this room after having done the solarium was this was actually acting like a tiny solarium within the house. It had so much light from the outside, and it was a really clean, it could be a really clean space. So what we did was we moved into it, we just cleared it out. We tried to figure out how to sculpt it in the best way to bring the light in and really capture a clean, beautiful space that was equivalent to that solarium space. So the details and the materiality are very similar. We have the concrete, you can see the concrete sink. We have the steel in the doorway and the threshold. And we have some glass when you get inside. So it's a really open, airy, light-filled space. Like I said, the skylight was existing, but it had been, it was trimmed out in a very odd way. And the way that the ceiling was shaped to capture the light wasn't bringing all the light in. We wanted to make sure that we could sculpt that light and use it as part of the character of the space. So here's some more details. And the mood of that space really changes throughout the day. You can see in this picture on the left, it's a little bit moodier and less bright. It changes wonderfully and acts sort of like an internal clock in the house. But the details here that you're seeing are, we have that's one of the doors. There are two doors going to the two bedrooms here. And this door has frosted glass on it. Both of them have frosted glass so that we could use some of that light that was coming in from the center part of the house and spread it into those bedrooms on the side. And then the little thin lines that you're seeing there are this very well fabricated and built set of storage cabinets and a door to a hidden closet that just sort of blends into the wall work there.
So it was really important to us that we designed the solarium and all the different parts of it with as much attention and care as the original craftsman was built. So these pictures that you're seeing here are not from our house, they're just general craftsman details, but there's often all this well-constructed, really intentional detailing and a lot of moments throughout these houses that are designed for a specific purpose. So in the top left, you can see the rafter tails that are often articulated. Then to the right, we have the hearth, which always gets a lot of attention in craftsman houses. Below that is a built-in bench. There's a lot of built-in benches and banquettes throughout craftsman houses. And the bottom left shows a little nook for a telephone that I love, because it's one of those things that it's a very specific thing that is designed for this one purpose. So here are some of the details that we used in the solarium. Moving clockwise from top left, we have our trellis, which is what's defining that entrance, and it's put together with T-sections, steel T-sections. Moving to the right, we have our hearth. It's the most important part, focal point of that room, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Below that, we have this concrete element that moves throughout the solarium. It's our version of the built-in bench. And we have these areas in the bench that have that very specific purpose that we're defining as a sitting area. So there are 2 areas of that bench where the concrete gets replaced by these wooden slats. And underneath there's a cubby where you can put your books or the blankets, and it's meant to be a more comfortable place to sit and a more functional place to sit along that entire bench. And then on the bottom left, this is the siding of the cladding of the fireplace, which is the steel banding. And depending on how big you have this on your screen, you might be able to see how beautifully it's constructed. It has all the weld marks are very thoughtfully placed and just the right amount. And the materiality is very important here. So the doors is one of those places where we were designing very intentionally for the way our client wanted to live. So like Camille said, the original house was very dark and had small rooms, and we needed this room to have that flexibility to adapt to the different activities and the different weather. This is the view when the doors are all folded, which you saw earlier. But we wanted to talk to you about the challenges of doing something like this. So when you have a room that can completely open up and completely close down, you really have to think about how you are going to address climate control. We live in Texas, so it is really necessary in a room like this to have air conditioning and heating too. But when you open it up, you want to be able to shut down the air conditioning to this room without having to shut down the entire house. So we have 2 layers of protection for that we've done. One is that we have a lift and slide unit that we installed between the dining room and the solarium, so that if the solarium is going to be completely opened up, you can shut down or divide those 2 rooms and have a sealed division there. And in addition to that, the ductware system has a damper so that you can shut off this room only and keep the rest of the house going. Another very important consideration here in Texas is bugs. Bug screens really are necessary if you want to spend any time outside for a large part of the year. But it's never ideal to be looking out through the beautiful glass through a screen. So the solution here was to install a retractable bug screen that can be hidden when you're not using it or when the doors are closed. And it can be just rolled down whenever you actually needed it. And here we can also see some of the other detailing. We have the doors that go all the way to the ceiling. That was an important thing for the effect of being able to open up those doors and have the room really feel like it's completely open. When you do these large expanses, you have to usually have steel above that, right, to carry the weight. But then you have to carefully coordinate that with the structural engineer to make sure that that piece of steel is not going to have any significant deflection that then is going to cause problems with the unit. So those are some of the examples of the level of coordination that has to happen when you're doing a system like this. On the left side of the drawing, you can see the steel terminations. We have a steel channel that borders the entire roof facing out. And the scupper and the gutters are integrated into that. So it's all one seamless system. And hopefully all of you have had time to look through the videos in the home store material, but this is just a clip from that video showing how the doors open and how it completely transforms the space.
Okay, so we're going to go back inside. This is the hearth that we were talking about earlier. It's the same picture you saw before, but this really was sort of the focal point of the space, and the glass on either side of the fireplace is stationary glass. It's the only part that doesn't open up, but this is sort of our anchor point while those big side walls completely open up and retract. The thing that's great about this moment is not only is it the place where all of the materials came together, we have the concrete in the bench, we have the steel at the fireplace, we have the plaster ceilings, which we haven't even talked about, but all of the inside of the solarium is plaster, which is technically the same as stucco, and it is a very durable indoor-outdoor material. So we weren't going to have a bunch of problems with sheetrock. And the glass, everything comes together right here. One of the really key pieces is the landscape that you're seeing beyond that glass, because we'll talk about this a little bit later again as we move into the landscapes segment of the presentation. But when you have a glass box like this in the middle of the city or anywhere, the backdrop of that, whatever is outside of the box plays as much a role on the inside of the box visually as anything that you would be building. So here we are, we've got the landscape, we've got the places where we have the beautifully crafted details, and we like this hearth has a special sort of importance to us because it was one of those places where we really got all that collaboration in, especially with the contractor. Garland from Wood-Eye worked with us to create a system where we could make the screen for the fireplace go away entirely. So it retracts into that space that's above the mantle. And if you look to the right side, you'll see a pulley and a counterweight that goes along the side. So here we are inside of the fireplace. And I think we had a lot of conversations about how to engineer a pulley and a counterweight, and how much weight needed to be in that weight. The height of it and the size of it as it's filled with concrete is exactly the right size that we needed to pull that screen up. So you can see the screen on the left in its closed position, and it has a little water jetted steel piece in front. And then we have another video here. This is the door underneath is where the firewood is stored, and when you turn the gas on and off. And then you move the firewood into the fireplace, screen comes down, counterweight goes up. It was a really beautiful detail that worked out nicely.
So this is another fun little detail, and usually one that most people are surprised by. And in this bench that we have that runs along the entire solarium, we have a nook for the cat door. And, you know, pets get a lot of attention in a lot of our projects, and this is not the exception. We have, the nook has its own light and everything, and on the outside, which is what you're seeing on the right side, we have a steel door that is designed in the same way as all the little parts of the solarium, and it folds down and becomes the ramp for the cats.
Okay, so here we are at the solarium at nighttime in its party mode. But again, we put the slide up to remind us to talk about the importance of the landscape within the project. So most of the time when you see a big glass box like this, you'd see it out in a beautiful landscape area where you're bringing the scenery of a lake in or a river. When you're in a tight site like this, and you saw it in the site plan, we had very little space between us and the neighbors. The landscape and the room outside of the room was just as important as anything we could put inside the room. So on that note, we will take you out of our slideshow, and we are going to let the landscapers talk a little bit. Jennifer Orr is here with us, and she is one of the partners of Studio Balcones. She is going to talk a little bit about their company and the project here. And then she's gonna show us, we're gonna show a video of her partner, Elsa Frank, talking about the specific project. Take it away, Jennifer.
Thanks, guys. So yes, I'm Jennifer Orr, a landscape architect here in Austin, and one of the founding principals and owners of Studio Balcones. We are also a woman-owned business. And just to tell you a little bit about us, we do a pretty diverse range of projects. We do landscape architecture and urban design. So we do some planning work, regional planning, city planning. We've done a fair amount of commercial work. More recently, we've done more civic, municipal work, working for the city of Austin, San Antonio River Authority. And recently, if I can brag a little, one of our projects at the University of Texas won a 2020 ASLA Honor Award, and ASLA is basically landscape architect's version of the AIA, and just recently launched a new website, so feel free to go check out some of our work. And then of course we also do residential work, and I love doing residential work. I like the relationship with the client. I like being able to collaborate with the the contractors, with the architects, with whatever, sometimes with interior designers, really enjoy that relationship. And in this one in particular, just like Camille said, it's a small lot and every inch counts. So we really just worked hard to create a green envelope around the solarium and also to make the entire landscape sing so that you have wonderful views from inside. And then when you're outside and the landscape itself, you can really enjoy it because it is a tight lot. So there was a lot of screening involved, but also thinking about layers of vegetation and just giving you that lushness so that from any angle you really felt like you were in a beautiful space, which it is, a very beautiful space. And then now my partner, Ilsa Frank, she did a little video about the importance of nature and what being in nature and even just seeing nature can do for your physical and mental health. So enjoy that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ilsa Frank, founding principal of Studio Balcones, and I'm very happy to be here with you and Camille and Ada to talk with you about the solarium, and then more broadly about the mental and physical benefits of exposure to nature. So there's a lot of research and different terms that are used in talking about exposure to nature and its value on your health. The Japanese came up with the term forest bathing in the 80s, I believe, and they began to study what it means to go out into a forest and simply just be there. It doesn't require you to be running or meditating or doing anything at all. Just simply being there and exposing yourself to it helps you so much. And there's also the concept of nature bathing, just generally, and green time. So those are some of the terms used around it. So I'm here with you asynchronously. I am pre-recording this on Zoom, and like this woman behind me who is so happy about fall, I am currently, as I am being viewed by you, out in Leakey, Texas, hopefully seeing a bit of fall color as I'll be close to the Lost Maples State Park. It's one of the most beautiful parts of our state, and I love fall. It's my personal favorite season. So let me tell you a little bit about some of the benefits of being in nature, or exposing yourself to nature. So I think I want to tell you a little bit about how it benefits you, and then how you can help incorporate more nature into your lives, and why that doesn't have to be an aesthetic compromise for whatever taste you have in modernism or whatnot. So a big benefit, lots of research on this topic. A huge benefit is it actually can help create cancer-fighting cells within your body by being exposed to nature. It can decrease your risk of a heart attack. It can protect you against obesity and diabetes. It can boost your mood. It can decrease inflammation, improve your skin, and it's just great for like anti-inflammatory responses. So there are some theories on what causes this, how nature begins to impact us. It could be the concentration of oxygen within a forest that causes this. It could be a plant chemical called phytoncides that are released by plants as part of their defense mechanism against bacteria, insects, and fungi. So that somehow we respond to that as well in a positive way. So there's still a lot of unknowns, I think I would say, as to why it's beneficial or how it benefits, how nature provokes us to be positively in response to it, but it's definitely proven that it is helpful to human beings. So I think everyone in this time is spending more time in their backyards, maybe taking more walks in their neighborhood, and just having different habits than we did maybe a year ago. And so I think I hear a lot about people getting outside, which is great, but we're seeing at Studio Balcones a lot of phone calls about people's backyards or new backyards that they've just acquired because they wanted more backyard. So I think that with the solarium, thinking beyond strictly having plants in a backyard is the interaction of the inside-outside architecture, landscape architecture interface. So the solarium is on two sides entirely glass, basically, right? And so you basically are outside. And because we used a lot of evergreen plant material, the bamboo, the palmettos, the flax lily, it will be green to be viewed year round. It'll have that immersive experience. I think the lawn might be the one thing, in winter would become less green. So we really thought about that in terms of the year-round experience of this space and giving you that green. I know from recent personal experience, my husband and I have been doing a lot of remodeling, and we just flipped around where our bedroom is, and I now have a view out a sliding glass door from my bed, which looks out onto a mostly evergreen forested area, and it's so great. I love it. And I feel so much happier when I wake up in the morning. So I've been firsthand experiencing sort of these mental health effects in a very positive way with just that one little change is a new window to see nature in the morning and when I go to sleep. So that's my pitch for plants and happiness and physical wellness. I hope that you might take this to heart and either think about getting outside. Like I said, you don't have to run, you don't have to do anything, you just have to be in it. And think about ways that you might be able to change your immediate environment to increase your exposure to nature and have more green time in your life, because it's for everyone, young, old, it's good for us, whether we're maybe wanting to get benefits to reduce problems of ADD to all the way to Alzheimer's. It's just the best medicine that you can get for free. Well, maybe some cost of some plants, but if you take care of them, it'll be very long-term and well rewarding. So enjoy the homes tour, and thank you.
Thank you to Jennifer and Ilsa. And we also want to hear from Garland. Garland is our wonderful contractor from Wood Eye Construction. We love working with Garland. We've done several projects with him. He loves paying attention to those details as much as we do. The solarium had a lot of really complicated details that we sat around and talked for hours about. We worked together to make sure, it didn't just look nice and clean, but it also was going to perform the best way that it could. So I would leave you here now with Garland.
Hey everyone. I'd like to just start out by saying thank you to Ada and Camille for this opportunity. And it was a great project to work on, and kind of echo what they were talking about earlier. Part of what made it so special was just the fact that it had all the larger sort of predictable moves, but like large steel, maybe a large curtain wall of windows, but it also had just chock full of small little details that were pretty much crafted as a one-off and made by craftsmen, and it was just a fun project to sort of mess around with. And I appreciate those because they don't come around very often, because a lot of times you're you deal with a lot of different personalities in this business, and these two in particular are they're huge on talent, but they're low on ego, and it makes the job really, really nice to work on, because if you happen to have an idea and they are often willing to hear it, then sometimes, you know, you get to have your way. But they're super talented and they're super giving, and they're very gracious, and I've always enjoyed the jobs we work on with them. So a little bit about the company. I've been here since '94. Started off more of a historical restoration bent, but have worked into different facets of the Austin market, and we've been lucky to be sort of successful from time to time and get to work with a lot of really smart people and gracious hosts and great clients like this one. This client may be the most patient client we've ever worked with, and it was a pleasure, honestly. And when I go back and see them and they put the pictures up of all the little things that we did, I forgot about a lot of those things, and they're really fun to see again and to kind of remember the process and what had to happen, and the way that it didn't go quite like you thought it might the first time, and then they were quick to come back in with a solution and try to figure out how to even make it better than what it might have been heading towards the first time. So again, we're happy to be part of this project, and we're out there. You know, you might look us up on woodiconstruction.com, and you know, who knows, we might be willing to build something for you. That's all I got.
We're muted.
Thank you, Garland. I also wanted to say, just to comment on that, because I think sometimes this is something we forget to talk about, but just as with anything else, with writing or painting or anything, cooking, the more joy that's brought into the process and the team, it shows in the product in the end. And I think that's something that went really well on this project, and any project that we've worked on with Studio Balcones or with Garland, it is a joy to work together in a collaborative nature. It's something that we feel like brings another layer of goodness to all the projects. When you have more minds that are coming from different areas that have different crafts and skills from different backgrounds, it just makes it that much richer. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's the end of our presentation. So we'd love to hear some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adam, Camille, and Jennifer and Garland. It was just wonderful to get a little bit of insight into what was going on behind the scenes in this beautiful home. And definitely, we're happy to open the floor to some questions. And it looks like we've got one. Feel free to just pop some things into the Q&A as they come to you. But a first question that came up during the presentation, this was from Nancy. How do you deal with water with the continuous flooring from inside to outside?
So there's different things that we did in this particular project. The retractable door has a track that is recessed into the tile, but there is a drainage system underneath that. We also have a very large overhang protecting that, right? So we always try to do as much passive solutions as we can for these things. So there's very little water that gets there to begin with, but if anything does get in, there's a way for the water to get out.
Additionally, all the materials that are inside that solarium are basically waterproof. So if the water did ever get inside there, the flooring is and the walls and everything are not a damp proof issue. The real threshold is in between the solarium and the dining room, which is yet another exterior style door to keep, just in case he, for some reason, left open all those doors and a huge storm blew through, you'd still protect the real interior portions of the house.
Mm-hmm. Garland, feel free to jump in if you want to add anything to any of these questions.
All right. I forgot to add that I was also an all-woman owned and run business before, so just want to
We have a couple more questions that came up. We have one from Kelsey. It says, did the request or need for a pet door shape the design of the hearth and bench seating from the beginning, or was it something that fit into the design, and who designed or made the pet door?
I think the original form of that bench was because the cat question came in very, very early. This client has had many cats over time and loves the cats, spends a lot of time helping at shelters. And that was one of the basic criteria. And if anyone has ever had to do a pet door in a project that is this buttoned up and has this much detail to it, and has a lot of big glass openings, it is a challenge every time. So we knew we were going to have to go with something that was very custom. I did not work on the detailing of it after it went in. I worked on the more, the larger picture front end parts of the project. So Ada and Garland can probably talk more about the detailing of it.
Yeah, so this was a tricky one because, you know, any off-the-shelf pet doors that you can buy are usually not very good looking, but they perform really well. They're sized correctly. They have all the layers of the plastic to seal back up. So we have one of those doors that is installed in there, but everything around it. So that's inserted into a steel frame, and then we have this steel door on the outside that was folding down, and that, you know, we had a lot of conversations with Garland about that. You know, how does it hinge? How much does it weigh? When do we have to have something that is covering that up so that other animals can't get in? So it was a result of a lot of conversations, and it kind of morphed as we went, but the idea was there from the beginning. We even had to put what is that called? Like a concrete paver that's raised from the ground so that the ramp could fall down into that. It was a little higher up off the ground, and the cats could jump into that and the ramps go up. So Garland, do you remember anything else about that?
I was going to say, don't forget the porch light. There's a little light inside of that. In the concrete part of it inside, there is a little light. So you can turn a little cat porch light on and welcome the cats. Sorry, go ahead, Garland.
I sort of remembered that you had that bench designed that way, and was that going to be where the original cat litter box was going to go? And then I think that we couldn't figure out where to put the entry, and then I think Ada, you thought, why don't we just put it that way? And then Don said he could put the box somewhere. I mean, I can't remember that exactly, but I sort of thought that might be part of it.
There was always a cat nook
Right.
involved in the bench, because that was important. Yeah.
You've had a request to produce this. So if you have another, anyone that you would need to produce that.
If I had to do another one?
Yeah, we need to have those made. They look very good. That was the comment.
Much better than the ones that you buy online, right?
Yeah, those were just custom made. Those are just much like the little door that's underneath the fireplace. It's just, those are fabbed up. That was probably made either on site by one of our guys, or made, we use Crippen sheet metal was what they're called, but they're a huge steel fabrication place that can pretty much, everyone says this, but they're pretty much true. If you can draw it, they can pretty much build it if it's out of anything metal. So that's a plug for them.
And one thing just to add on to this whole craft and craftsman thing, I mean, someone asked us early on when we were putting this presentation together, what makes it interesting to practice architecture in Austin? And I think this is one of the things. We have there's so much exploration into different ways of building and details, and there's just sort of a lust for doing things that are on the edge and a little different, that you have this entire community of craftsmen that have built up behind that sort of adventurous look at the way that we build. And so you have access to all of these different skill sets and minds that come together on a project to make these really fun, interesting solutions to problems. It's a great place to be able to practice.
Totally.
More questions, Jess?
Yeah, we have some more questions. How about, there's a question for Jennifer. How does the relationship work with the landscape architect when you're on the project? And like, how does that work as part of a team? Like, how did the team come together? Were you hired by the client? How did that work?
So Ada and Ilsa have been friends for years. They both were in, correct me if I'm wrong about this, Ada, you were in undergrad architecture together. Isn't that how you met? Yeah. So my business partner has an undergrad in architecture and then decided she wanted to do landscape architecture. And so her and I met in graduate school. So Ada reached out to us. I mean, y'all were into the project, but by no means was the project done. So we were able to have a conversation about, you know, first what they were most concerned about was obviously the screening, like Camille showed that wall. I mean, you just have a giant window wall and there's your neighbor. So we detailed a new fence and obviously layers of planting to work. But we also got to look at the entire site. We ended up giving him a new driveway, worked on some drainage issues that had been bothering him for a while. He's a really is a fabulous client. Let me answer your question. ATA brought us in, but I actually think we were contracted directly through the owner, if I remember that correctly. Yes. So we both, and sometimes we're contracted through the architect, but most of the time on residential projects, we are our contract is with the owner, the person who owns the house. And so ATA would come to our meetings and we would all sort of work together when we would discuss the design. But the owner was very opinionated in particular, and which is great. I love that when the owner really knows what they want and what they don't want. And so there was a good relationship there. But yeah, we just kind of, the three of us worked together, I would say, to come up with what worked. And what I really like is that his entire landscape is, I mean, you see that, you know, before and after picture. The front yard is so much more gracious. Everything just works better. So it just really sets off the whole project.
We have another question. This one, a technical question about the HVAC. Can you talk a little bit more about the systems and the zoning? Where's the return, the supply? How does that work with a retracting door?
So we have, Garland, I'll let you talk about that, but all the traditional grills are slot diffusers. Oh, it's Garland.
No, I'm waiting.
Oh, no, you were kind of buffering. I was just going to say that the actual grills, they're all slot diffusers. If you look through the pictures, you will see the long, black, skinny lines. That's all the supplies and the returns. And then we did this damper system. Garland, if you want to talk about that.
So it's just there's a single air handler in the attic, and it's just a zone system. And that, so there's two different thermostats, and the one that's in the Solarium. So when it's on, it basically just reads what's in there. And so if the doors are open, then it's generally shut off. And then when they're closed, it just reads. So it's independent. So there's a separate return and a separate supply, and it all is just very discreet. So the system itself is smart enough to know, you know, when to open up a damper, when to close a damper, and it's pretty straightforward.
Garland, do you want to talk about the AC for the little bathroom? Because that was actually a very interesting one, because the bathroom was so small, we couldn't just put an AC system for that bathroom. So Garland came up with this one on his own, and it was really clever, I thought.
Well, I may have lied and said I came up with it on my own, but I guess. So I guess we thought, so he had a system. Don likes to keep these things, sorry, really chilly. Sorry, I didn't mean to out you there. So the upstairs unit was well functioning, and as everyone knows, cold air sort of drops to the bottom, and so all we did was put a passive grill in the underneath the cabinet in the upstairs unit, and it just happened to be very close in proximity to this bathroom, and so there's just a vent that runs into that bathroom, and we reversed a exhaust fan up in that unit. So when we want to cool that little bathroom down there, we just turn on an exhaust fan that you would typically have blowing the other way out of a bathroom, and it just pulls down the cold air from the upstairs apartment that's above that. So it worked out pretty good. I think it worked out pretty good. It's hard to know. Have you heard from him that it? Yeah,
it works.
Yeah, I want to say that little bathroom under the stair is probably my favorite part of the whole project. It doesn't get enough attention for what it is, but it is tiny. And everything is tucked in perfectly. And it's a cool little space to be in, as tiny as it is. I think, you can't have many modesty issues. It's all screened and you can't see anything, but you do see movement in there.
We just build what you guys draw. So, I mean, I was looking at those, I mean, I don't want to get I know this is what this is about, but was looking at all those little details and was thinking, oh man, you guys, really, all the little things. I love it that it's human scale all around this whole project, and that you can get right up to everything and look at it as closely as you want to look at it. And it's still interesting to look at. And the more you're in the space, the more you appreciate all the little things that sneak up on you while you're looking around the room and think, oh man, that's sweet. So that's what's nice about a lot of your design, in my opinion. It's just like you don't walk in necessarily. There's still the wow factor. There's all that stuff going on. But there's also a lot more if you just want to hang around the space. And that's certainly, I agree with you about that bathroom. I think that bathroom is super cool.
Yeah.
And it's the bathroom is so small, we can't really even photograph all those little things because you can't get in there far enough to be able to photograph there's a cove light, there's a lot of things that are very much about the touch, right? Like when you are going to use it, you realize it, like the toilet paper holder, right? You wouldn't necessarily look at it until you're about to reach for the toilet paper.
Well, we have a bunch more questions, so I want to keep rolling if you don't mind. We have some questions about the floor. So what is the floor in the solarium? What material is that?
It's just a large format gray tile. It's a I can't
porcelain
remember.
tile.
Yeah.
Porcelain.
It's porcelain.
Yeah.
And then following up on that, you had, I guess the addition's floor level is raised from the bungalow home. Do they have different floor slab heights? How did you deal with that?
This actually was easier than we thought it was going to be, because one of the issues with a craftsman is that they're usually on pier and beam, and then a project like this would require a slab, and it did. And the addition that was put on there in the 80s already had a slab. So the addition that had been put on where we were connecting was a slab foundation, and we connected into that at the same level. We tore the flooring out in that area and pulled the flooring so that everything on that was built after the 40s was all in one material palette, and the original was still original with the wood floors. But I do remember there were some issues where we had some of that pier and beam backing up to where the TV is, and then where the big concrete footing starts on the solarium. Some height differences that we had to adjust for, but it wasn't as complicated as you would think it would have been. Do you remember anything, Garland, from that?
No, I mean, no, I think I remember we just matched the slab like you said that was there, and there were some open areas where the piers butted up against it, and I can't even honestly remember how we resolved it. I think we maybe poured a little bit, put some steel in some places, but that wasn't too challenging really.
Yeah.
We did. I think that part that we went in was also because we found some old water damage. So, there's always opportunity in these projects. As soon as you start touching things and you find things that can be made better or need fixing, then we address them. And that connection at the edge of the old house needed some work.
Okay, and then in terms of, there was a really interesting question about the side yard setback. You had that beautiful entry that comes in on the side there. So the city of Austin allows for, there's some kind of the trellis coming into that space. Can you talk a little bit about the limitations or the abilities that you have to build within that?
Sure. So the side setback for that zoning is 5 feet to your property line. And within a 5-foot setback, you can put overhangs and unoccupied space into that setback. We were fortunate that his house had a wider setback, was built with a wider setback than that. So there was probably enough space. I think at one time, perhaps a car came up beside it. Like we pulled the car back closer to the street, but I think originally you could drive a car up kind of next to it. So if you look at the slides or the photographs, when you're first approaching, when you can kind of see the solarium in front of you, we probably had 12 feet or so there to the property line. So it was enough to get kind of a chunk of yard entry space into it. But as you come up next to the solarium, we are at the setback as close as we could get to it, and only overhang into the setback as much as we were allowed. And then we came up under the trellis for that entry. So sharing that space, it was a sort of playing with overlaps and where we could gain the most space and exactly how much passing space we needed and how effective the trellis had to be to keep the sun from blazing into the solarium. So you'll notice too that we've got that wide trellis on one side, and then we've got a wide covered space over the cooking area, and that really helps mitigate a lot of the light and heat in that space.
Okay, well, we're just almost out of time, but I wanted to let everyone know that we're going to keep answering questions. So if you want to stick around, we might go a little bit over. Can you talk about the stair sink? Was that a custom piece?
The stair sink?
The sink
I'm
and
sorry, the under the stair sink. Yeah.
The sink itself is it's a porcelain sink, but the cabinet and the whole structure around it is one of those custom pieces that was fabricated. So there's a steel, it's essentially a steel box that is slightly recessed into the wall, and the box of the cabinet and the sink all fit in it.
And then mirror in the back
the
of
mirror.
it, right? So it all just kind of tucks in.
Can you talk a little bit about the finishing for the concrete and the detailing of the concrete, about that process, how you got such a consistent finish?
Well, we're going to let Garland talk about that, but what I can tell you is I think revisiting and going back for photographing and video of that space, it gives me a new appreciation for the level of attention that was given when pouring that concrete. It is smooth. It is nice. There is not a rough edge anywhere. The deep, how it was formed and how the edges were treated. All of the pours weren't perfect initially, but they're all perfect now. And it's all concrete has a little bit of error and bubble to it, and that's what makes it interesting. Otherwise, you might as well plaster it. But it is very touchable, and some people don't like concrete to be in proximity because they think it's too rough, but this is not. It was coddled concrete. Garland, do you want to talk to us about the forming?
Well, it's just a pretty traditional board form, and we used, I forgot what we used exactly. We formed it up as we traditionally would, and then we just took a bunch of 1x material and planed it down really smooth, and then just left the gaps so that it would, and then put a bunch of form release basically it's just an oil petroleum product that you smear on the forms, and so that the concrete will peel away without creating a little void. And then they also, if anyone's seen concrete being poured, they have these large vibrators that they use that they cause it to take out, that causes all the air to come out of it. And sometimes it doesn't all come out and you have to then redo it. And sometimes you redo it again, and then sometimes you put steel around that one that you redo.
I'll also add to that if you look carefully at the projects, you'll probably see that the photos, but all the lines in the concrete, hopefully that won't land on our gray hair. All the lines in the concrete track through the entire process. So from the bench to the outdoor kitchen to the fireplace, they're all perfectly lined up with each other. And that was, we love that Garland is as picky as we are with those things.
And going back to the ADU in the back, so was the outdoor shower a request, or was it due to size constraints that it was put where it was? And was that an owner request, or is that something that came out of the design process?
I honestly can't remember if the owner asked for it or if
he did. I think he asked for it because he wanted to, coming back from runs.
Okay.
He just wanted to get all the goo off before you go back into the house.
Mm-hmm. And it was outdoor intentionally. It wasn't because we couldn't fit it in the powder bath. The powder bath was meant to be just that for guests. So he didn't need another place to shower for himself. Except
there is a full bathroom in the ADU. This is the powder. The reason these two things are on the ground level is for party flow, to have it in that main party space. And the outdoor shower is just because if you can have an outdoor shower, why not? I mean, it is kind of a wonderful treat. People don't use them daily most of the time, but it's really nice, especially when it gets so hot here and you go out for a run and it is sweaty and it is hot and you don't want to go straight back into the house.
And our client actually, he has said that he uses it a lot. So it's fun to have.
Yeah. A quick question. So what direction does the solarium face? Is that south?
The trellis side is south. So the southern side gets the most protection because we have that big green screen wall. And then the trellis goes out and actually meets the bamboo. It's kind of disappearing into the bamboo as the bamboo is starting to grow in a little bit more. So the big overhang is on the west side, and the east is the shorter glass.
And how long did the whole remodel take? Were there any city backups or for review?
Actually, for this one, we did have a long wait for the permit. This is in a historic neighborhood. It's not a historic contributing structure, but it did have to go through a long process of the city. The project actually took a long time, but it's because we added every single one of these things one at a time. So we did the solarium first, the bathroom under the stairs, and then the interior bathroom. And also, you know, and this client was not really in a rush at all. He wanted it to be as close to perfection as possible. So there were things that took a little bit longer, and he was okay with it. There were things that he wanted to redo, and we took the time. He was okay with that.
There are some clients that really enjoy the process a lot, and he lived in the house the whole time we were working on it. He never moved out. I think he really just enjoyed the process of being part of it, and this was just as much his project as it was ours.
Can you talk more about the strategy of tying in the new steel structure with the craftsman structure? I guess that would be from the, that could go to Garland and to you guys.
So if you look at that back, I guess the money shot elevation where they show the one where the doors are all wide open and you're looking at the back side of the grill. There's that whole band of steel that you see is a large C channel, and there's what you can't see is it's attached to that gable on the left-hand side there. That's all attached back to the framing and up around the eaves of where the old structure was. And I can't remember exactly what's in there, but I can tell you that I know the engineer on there, and I'm sure it was completely over the top about how much we had to do to put in there. But there's a lot of attachment to that, and then there's a lot of structure that's the way that the steel is put together so that there's not any kind of racking or movement, or because the house itself is still pretty much on probably maybe slightly deeper, but not a lot deeper footings than maybe 2 feet, and that part of town really has a lot of movement. So we wanted to make sure that this whatever we built didn't move. And yet, whatever, if the house was going to move, it wasn't going to affect what happened to whatever it is we did. So it's basically just a self-contained little bunker that the house is attached to.
And architecturally, we use either the steel structure or steel trim to do the transition of materials of when the new was touching the old. So in the solarium, the columns themselves are what transitions along the wall from old to new. And there's several thresholds throughout the process where you have a steel threshold transitioning and marking that division of old.
Okay, and maybe just for everybody joining us that is not familiar with historic review or historic neighborhoods, can you just quickly explain what a non-contributing structure means, and like how, like what is a historic neighborhood in Austin? What does that mean?
Yes, I'll take that one. So we have worked on a variety of different scales of the or levels of historic. You can have a landmark building, which is when you go and you apply to have your structure or your house registered as a historic landmark. So that has a certain level of protections and reviews that go along with that. We have actually worked on a historic landmark project with Garland in the same neighborhood, and it had very different rules. A historic neighborhood requires you to go through a review process with the Historic Commission, and they can accept or deny requests mostly having to do with demolition. So if you're in a historic neighborhood, they just don't want you to disrupt the fabric of the neighborhood. They're trying to keep what it all looks like together with the same character and feel as it was historically. So that was a contributing factor to our design as well, right? Because not only did the client love the craftsman, and not only was it just a beautifully intact craftsman from the front, but it is in a really great neighborhood and street that has really great cohesion between all of the houses, particularly the ones that are remaining that have been less touched. So the idea to put it behind and just sort of peep out from behind was our way of showing respect to that historic environment. I think with any structure that is older than that was built before a certain date in Austin, you do have to go through an administrative historic review. just so that Austin doesn't get completely demolished all at one time. And we've had many projects that have been affected by administrative review as well.
So that's a good segue actually for the follow-up, which would be Sharon was asking, what suggestions do you have for working with the Historic Preservation Commission that hasn't approved many projects showing a clear delineation between the old structure and a new, more modern looking addition?
I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but the advice that we have always gotten from, we've really only worked with historic in Austin, and I think probably every historic district has a slightly different take on how they want to deal with it. But mostly what they want you to do is preserve what is there and help it stay intact. But if you're going to do something else, like an addition or something, they want it clearly to appear to be something that is not the original structure. So we took this one to sort of an extreme, but even if you were to try to put a craftsman addition on it, they're going to want you to show the delineation between the new and the expanded version of it.
And so we're not ever trying to match what was there, because that just, it's not very authentic.
That's good advice. And then can you talk about the process of designing for the operable glass panels, like how you designed them, how that came to be?
You know, this is another example of the collaboration. We had an idea of wanting to open up that wall, and this happens in a lot of projects, right? There's always a lot of requests for, can we have glass that opens up? But then there's all those other considerations that we have to think about, like the climate control and what's above it. You know, do you need steel to hold that up? So we start going to the showrooms and start talking to the people that represent all these different companies to see what's the most appropriate and what's the most appropriate system, right? So, you know, we've done this folding system. We've also done this kind of slider that retracts into the wall, and really understanding the pros and cons of each of these systems is how you can find what's most appropriate for that one particular application.
And it is per every project. We are working on a project right now where we were just looking at, believe it or not, the retractable guillotine door that goes all the way into the ground. So it just pushes up like this. Part of it goes into the ceiling, part of it goes in the ground. Voila, it's gone completely. Slightly more expensive than the folding retracting door. But there are solutions. There are many, many, many solutions out there now. They all have a price tag with them, and you just have to work with your different providers to find what meets the circumstances. The thing that comes up frequently with us is, how do you live with the system when it's not in its fully closed or fully retracted form? So how do you get in and out of the space on a day-to-day basis? So this one has, you know, what you would call a man door. Not that I love that term, but a person door that goes in the middle of it that you come in and out of on a daily basis. But the placement of that is different for every one of these systems. And when you have your bug screen that retracts all the way down, you're inside the solarium until you retract that thing back up into the ceiling. So they all have trade-offs. You just have to decide where your priorities are.
One thing that happens with the folding doors in particular often, and a lot of times we start, you know, we have them sketched out in the design and then they get taken out. And it's because you have to think about where they fold to, right? And oftentimes they start getting in the way. So there's been many times where we've ended up doing a different kind of system because the folding just ends up not being ideal.
Well, I think that about wraps everything up. Thank you to everyone for all your thoughtful questions and for joining us today. And thank you, Garland and Jennifer, for being there to go through everything. And especially thank you to Camille and Ada for sharing with us the project and for being our wonderful architects today. Feel free to check out the next presentation that's coming up.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, guys.